Good evening, and welcome to the Monday, April 25th special meeting of the Arts Commission. Under California law, public comments at special meetings are limited to subjects on the agenda only. Therefore, public comment will take place during Commission's consideration of the item. We'll start with roll call.
That was good. Commissioner Sagastigi.
Here.
Commissioner Emanuel.
Here.
Commissioner Bologna.
Here.
Vice Chair Bradbury.
Here.
And Chair Cowdery.
Here. The first thing is a presentation, I believe, by Carla Hansen on the Civic Park parking.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Carla Hansen. I work for the City Manager's Office. I'm an analyst, and one of my many duties is overseeing parking in the city. So feel bad for me right now. So my presentation to you this evening is really more of an update about some outreach that we've been doing in the last 3 weeks. So we've been hearing some complaints about lack of parking down at Civic Park and in that parking lot, and just an overall difficulty of having to find a parking spot there. So knowing that there's a lot of different stakeholders using the park, we decided to do some outreach to better understand what that problem is. So the last 3 weeks we've been meeting with community groups, the Senior Club Advisory Board, joint meeting with the civic arts groups, preschool participants, parents, teachers, to better understand what their parking experience is on a day-to-day basis, how long they're staying, and overall just getting more information about what the problem might be. In addition to that, we did an Intercept Survey because we wanted to get to folks that were maybe using the playground and areas like that. So we did an Intercept Survey where surveyors were actually in the park and talking to people as they were getting out of their cars and, hey, how was your parking experience today? How long are you staying? Just to better understand what was going on. That Intercept Survey concluded on the 21st, and we should have results back by May 5th. In addition to folks that we couldn't reach in any of those meetings or the Intercept Survey, we provided an electronic survey to all civic arts groups participants to fill out the same survey that some of the Intercept Survey participants were able to, some of the questions they were able to answer. And I checked this morning, and we've had about 180 responses. So we're reaching a lot of folks. So the outcome of this outreach is really, we'll see what the data shows, but what we're hoping for is a better solution to the parking issue out there. And we're looking forward to seeing some of the data, and so we can better define the problem and then come up with some good solutions for folks out there. And with that, it's pretty much my update. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Does anybody have any questions?
I've been a student of Civic Park for over 25 years. Is it possible to count the number of people that are enrolled in all the classes that are going on there, and all the people that are participating in the senior center, and all the people that are using the park, primarily in the children's area, and then count the number of cars and see if they match?
I guarantee you there will be less spaces than the number of people participating in the programs in the park.
That would alarm me. I would be really surprised if that were the case. I mean, Civic Park is the best free parking downtown for wherever you're going. I would think that the cheaters are just going crazy down there.
Yeah, we have heard, just anecdotally through our meetings, we have heard complaints about folks who are maybe parking in the park because it is free, and then maybe going downtown or parking there and going to work, parking there and going to the library. So a lot of different needs to balance in the park, and we're hoping some of this data will help us kind of figure out some better solutions.
Any other questions? Thank you so much for
Thank
the
you.
update. Good luck. The next thing on our agenda is the consent calendar, the approval of the minutes of the special meeting for January 25th, 2016, as well as March 21st, 2016. Have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Can we call for the vote?
Commissioner Sagastigi.
Aye.
Commissioner Emanuel.
Aye.
Commissioner Bologna.
Aye.
Vice Chair Bradbury.
Here.
And Chair Cowdery.
Aye.
That works too.
I am.
That works. Chair Cowdery. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Under consideration considerations, the next thing on the agenda is election of our chair, our new chair. Can I have a motion?
I nominate Polly Bradbury to be chair.
Is there a second?
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to elect Commissioner Bradbury as the chair. Call for the vote.
Commissioner Sagastigi.
Aye.
Commissioner Emanuel.
Aye.
Commissioner Bologna.
Aye.
Vice Chair Bradbury.
Aye.
Yes. And Chair Cowdery.
Aye.
Motion approved 5-0. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Take that.
Rearrange this.
Yes. Well, I have very big shoes to fill. You have done a phenomenally good job, which makes me all the more nervous taking over. I hope I can rise to the occasion, Sean. Thank you so much. And I'll give you my necklace later. Anyway, so next is the nomination for vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Sagastigi for vice chair.
Second?
And roll.
Commissioner Emanuel.
Yes.
Commissioner Cowdery.
Yes.
Commissioner Bologna.
Yes.
Commissioner Sagastigi.
Yes.
And Chair Bradbury.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, so next is the North Downtown Specific Plan. Pardon? Oh, the liaison appointments, I'm sorry. So next on the consideration are the liaison assignments, and we have it outlined that the Friends of Civic Arts Foundation will be myself and Commissioner Glynis Cowdery, and under design review, it would be Commissioner Bologna. Under the Library Art Gallery, it would be Commissioner Sagastigi and Emanuel. Do we have a motion?
You don't need a motion for that.
We don't need a motion for that.
Appointments.
Okay, that was the decision. The next is the North Downtown Specific Plan.
Hi, good evening, Chair Bradbury and members of the Arts Commission. My name is Pierce McDonald Powell, and I'm a senior planner with the City of Walnut Creek Planning Division. I'm also the staff liaison to the North Downtown Specific Plan Advisory Committee. And this is an exciting opportunity to plan for a coordinated land uses, transportation, and community design in North Downtown area. And I'm here this evening to ask for the Arts Commission's support and participation on the advisory committee by nominating a representative and an alternate to serve on the advisory committee and bring the Arts Commission's perspective to that planning effort. You have a long agenda tonight, so I'm going to stop here and ask if there are any questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
Are you looking for significant background experience or expertise from this commission?
We would be very pleased with the caliber of any member of the Arts Commission that was interested in participating.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions?
I have a comment. I just think it's great that you're including the Arts Commission from the start this time around, because I know that it hasn't always happened in the past, so thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I don't usually ask questions, but just to clarify, in the agenda report, it talked about the meeting schedule being the fourth Monday of the month, which is the same day as the Arts Commission. I know that you've had a conversation about that.
Yes, we have the expected date is either the third or fourth Monday of the month, depending on how it coordinates with both holiday schedules and the regular meetings of the Arts Commission. We will not conflict with your Arts Commission meetings.
Okay. So for the next item, we are moving public. Oh, okay, so, well, we have discussed it, but we haven't, there's not a final decision at this point. And
Here's when do you need an answer on this?
May 6th, according to the notes.
Right.
Yes, the deadline for applications is May 6th, and would really like to have the Arts Commission nominate those two participants.
I think staff's preference would be to at least nominate one person, so you could at least get going on the process. And if there's a question about who the alternate would be, that's something we could identify later. But I don't want this group to miss out on, when's the first meeting?
Well, the slate of nominees will be confirmed by the City Council on May 17th, and then the first meeting will be, we're expecting June 27th.
Let's make a nomination. So then, do we have a nomination for the Arts Commissioner to be on the North Downtown Specific Plan, and then we can always discuss an alternate later? Do we have a nomination?
Well, this can just be, it's like the liaisons, this can be appointment from the chair.
Oh, okay.
So if there's someone that you wish to appoint, that's fine.
I can be the alternate. I can't be there in June, so.
Yeah.
And you're having an issue with June as well?
Not so much June. I'm on the board at my kids' school. We meet, right now, we're meeting exactly on the third Mondays. But we are going to be, we're going to be deciding on the board schedule for next year Wednesday. By Wednesday, I'll know if it's going to change or not. So, yeah, right. I can't.
Which is why I said that this might have to be.
Well, here's a thought, is at least for
Push
now,
back.
perhaps you can have the two of you initially
Yeah, that
be
sounds
on
good.
that, and this is going to be 16-month, 18-month process?
Approximately 18 months.
Yeah.
There's
November
something-
2017, right?
Yes,
More or
that's
less?
right.
If all goes well.
That's right.
So, yeah.
So we can say Vice Chair Sagastigi and
Right.
Commissioner Cowdery
And I
at
know-
this point.
Yeah.
So is that all right if we don't say who the primary and who the alternate is right now?
Certainly.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. So we are switching the Public Art Master Plan update. So that will be next instead of the Brian Hirahara Development Public Artwork.
Good evening, Chair Bradbury and members of the Commission. Stephen Huss, Public Arts Supervisor. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. We're getting into the last lap, we hope, of reviews of this revised Public Art Master Plan. With your approval, your recommendations tonight, we'll be going forward to City Council in May, hopefully to adopt not only the revised master plan, but the commensurate city codes, municipal codes that are going to reflect some of the changes. So this has been in the works since City Council included review and revisions to the master plan and ordinances in its work plan for 2012-2014. These were the goals that guided the work and also provided some guidance to the subcommittee that was formed by the Arts Commission to begin this work, and it was to simplify the public art process for developers and staff, and also to identify funding sources for the Public Art Fund that would enable the city to realize more and higher quality art in Walnut Creek's public spaces. This is a brief history that may be familiar to many of you. Council's work plan in 2012-2014 identified this as a priority. The council directed staff to work through the Arts Commission, which then formed a subcommittee that included not only members of this commission, but the Design Review Commission, CED, and ARCS staff. There was a presentation in September 2014 to the DRC, which had provided tacit approval to the recommendations that were pending. We took revisions to council last year in February and November, and at the November meeting, council asked staff to review the fees component, with the Council Finance Committee. So we stepped back and went to Finance in March of this year. They had some recommendations for revisions that are included in the packet, and we're going to go into those in some detail later on. And then the last review we had were two steps at design review. The first was informational. The second one, they adopted a resolution in support of these recommendations with some changes that I'll address as well. So again, just in brief, these are some of the things that we're moving from the previous existing and actually the plan that holds sway now to the proposed revisions. So what those are, the key points were that design review would work with the developer to identify and approve sites for public art. The developer would then select the artist and artworks. The Art Commission would approve the artist and the artworks. And our proposed revisions is the DRC will review those sites and provide its findings and comments to the Arts Commission, but the Commission will now approve the locations as well as the artist and the proposed piece of work. In murals, there's also a change that murals which fell under the sign ordinance under the definition of decorative art were being approved by the Design Review Commission, which seemed a little out of step with the general duties to review and approve artworks in public. So our revision will move that responsibility to the Arts Commission, review and approval. We're reviewing murals from the definition of decorative art in the city's sign ordinance and adding this definition to public art plan and other ordinances which define murals as a singular work of art in which all text, graphics, and the design elements are related to the artistic design. As we worked through this, we also came to the idea of developing a location and scale criteria, which would be an aid to the Arts Commission and the DRC as they review public art and private development projects. And we noticed there really wasn't anything in writing that kind of guided that review. We also had in our draft plan criteria for selection of artwork that had been developed through the Arts Commission. So what we've done, when we went to DRC, we had the location and scale criteria included as a proposed piece, or an addendum rather, to the public art plan. After discussion with DRC, we've concluded that it's a better way to go forward is that we want to remove existing criteria for selection of artwork that are in the plan, combine them with a new criteria for location and scale. This is going to be an independent document that is the guidelines for review. So that would be separate from the master plan. So it's redacting the current criteria for artwork review. This enables us to really be more flexible and to develop it separately and to respond to growth of the collection, to changes in best practices, and really, I think, learn as we go with the collection and adapt. So what you've got in your plan is going to indicate that we've removed those criteria. We are not asking you to really review or approve those criteria tonight. We are saying that we seek your approval for the recommendation for the master plan as we present it. And later on down the road, we would be developing the criteria further in discussion with the Arts Commission and also with DRC staff. So I thought you'd like to see a little bit about the Finance Committee proposed revisions. They are included in your packet. But just in brief, so of course these are recommendations from Finance. They have to go to the full council. And we don't know what will occur at council, but this is the discussion. So assuming the standard public art fee for new construction or alterations, given minimum thresholds, is 1%, Finance Committee proposes that the parking structures will be assessed for at a fee of 0.5% of construction costs rather than 1%. This would include all structures but not surface parking. They are proposing an in lieu incentive that would encourage developers to contribute to the Public Art Fund, formerly called the In lieu Fund, and that would be setting that contribution amount at 0.75%, so 0.75%. This again is simply for contributions to the Public Art Fund, not for all projects. The Shadelands Business Park, to encourage occupancy, the Finance Committee would like to exclude them from the requirement for the percent allocation. That would be for 2 years or until a 90% occupancy rate or a 10% vacancy rate, however you look at it, is achieved. So it'll be 2 years to that point, whichever comes first, and then fees would kick in again. Nonprofit facilities would be again assessed at just half of 1%, assuming that it is a nonprofit-owned building and they are not simply tenants of the building. For healthcare facilities, one of the issues was that they were being, the valuation might be considerably higher for healthcare development, given that the infrastructure is much more complex and costly. So the proposal then is that they would be assessed at standard construction cost rates per the building official. And the last thing is the pledge from council to contribute $10,000 a year to the Public Art Fund, with the discretion to increase that contribution up to a total of $50,000, or maximum rather, $50,000 from the year-end surplus funds. So after your discussion tonight and your recommendation, we would be going forward to City Council on May 17, and then for a second reading and adoption of the changes in June. So our action requested of you this evening is to review, comment, and to forward your recommendations to the City Council on the proposed Public Art Master Plan and the revisions to the Municipal Code. Staff is standing by for any questions you may have.
Does anyone have any questions or comment?
I think that taking the criteria apart and having a separate document and refining it is absolutely necessary and a wise thing to do. Glad it's being formulated that way.
My question is actually aimed at you, Glynis, and you, Jane, in particular, because both of you were the Arts Commission members on the committee to draft this new version of the PAM, and you've also had so much more experience on the commission than myself. So my questions for both of you are, as it stands now, as it is, do you feel that this draft really does meet the two goals that are stated here, which is that it is going to be easier and less time-consuming for the public art process, and that the funding sources, that you have identified new funding sources? Do you feel that this document does that and the plan does that?
Go ahead. In terms of your first question, will it simplify it? I think so. I think it's smoother. I think the division of labor is appropriate, and yes. As far as the second one, identifying new sources of monies for the Public Art Fund, within the parameters of what the Public Art Master Plan covers, yes, but I still feel that the Commission should be charged with the task of finding some other sources as well, which wouldn't be appropriate to put that into the Public Art Master Plan. But do you want to add anything, Glynis?
No, I agree. I think that's definitely part of the strategic planning process that I look forward to doing at some point soon, hopefully. And as far as the simplification, I think it got a little bit more complicated when it went back through finance, but I think that those complications will actually maybe motivate more contributions to the Public Art Fund. So, it's kind of a balancing act in terms of that. So the one thing I do want to, I'm going to go ahead with my questions, and I concur with Commissioner Bologna in terms of having the criteria removed. But one thing I do want to ask is whether or not, because I think one of the things we discussed and the importance of those were not just for the Commission, but also for the developers to kind of know what we're looking at. So I just want to make sure that those will be given to the developers in addition to the plan. So when they submit an artwork, that they know what it is we're looking at.
Yes, that's right. I appreciate you bringing that up. That is our intent and goal, and to that end, of course, too, we want those to be pretty clear, easy to use, and it would be a document that we would often give them a developer doesn't have to review the entire plan, though it's accessible, but to be able to give a 2-page document to say these are the kinds of things that are going to be examined and reviewed as it goes through design review and art commission would be very handy. And we're also trying to develop a kind of a roadmap that is the steps that a developer will go through at a staff level and at a citywide level. So that would be an adjunct to that, or would it be a piece attached to that? I appreciate you bringing it up because I omitted mentioning it.
That's a good segue in terms of the flow chart, because one of the other things I realized was missing, after spending so much time with this, you think we would have talked about this earlier, but should a developer disagree with our recommendation, which I'm sure would never happen, but should that happen, we don't really have an appeal process outlined. So I don't know if that's something that the city council can determine, but it just seems like it should be spelled out. I don't know if that's
So
a
we have been,
question.
that was a question, I think, from a council member. So we have been looking at thoughts and options about how that would happen and have done some research about it. I don't think we have a recommendation tonight, but we're aware that that's an issue and,
Okay.
and looking at that.
And then my last question was just a clarification on attachment 2 to the PAMP, chapter 10 under, on page 3. Where's page 3? It says for 5 years from the effective date of this section, the amount of the public art fee for new construction or alternation described in ABH and blah, 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 will be an amount not less than 3/4. I know you're talking about the contribution to the public art fund if they choose to develop on their own or not to develop, but it's not really clear to me that that's what you're talking about here. I think we're missing some
You're missing
words.
We're
Yeah,
missing a
I think
phrase.
you would, I think, asked this question, and actually, I agree. We agree. We looked at it. The last sentence in that paragraph is meant to cover that, but it comes very late.
Yeah.
The value of projects placed on the site instead of a fee payment is not correspondingly discounted. That's good, but I think it's a little oblique. So I actually agree, and I'm thinking somewhere toward the top to say something like, for 5 years from effective date as applies to contributions to the public art fund. So I think some clarity there, and we can just include that per your suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Joe?
Just a
Lauren?
minute.
Steve, you and I both attended the DRC meeting on the 6th, and I believe that at that meeting, there were questions concerning the orderly flow of the process, as well as the objective to get the artist involved in the design of the project, including the building and site plan, as early as possible. And if I'm not mistaken, there was a bit of a conflict in their eyes as to how long it takes to be able to finally get the artist selected so that they can have a design to work with to integrate into the project, and that the process, as we have it outlined right now, slows that possibility down until long after the building has been designed. And then the artist is finally approved, and then they can start doing schematics, and by that time, the horse is out of the corral. And then the artwork has to catch up to the project design. Has anyone brought up the possibility of saying, subject to your approving the qualifications of the artist, we would like to present a design at the early stage that integrates the project and the artwork at the same time, and get the feedback of all the commissioners before it's too late to really refine it, as opposed to just reacting to it. Does that make any sense? And did they really emphasize that from the standpoint of trying to keep the schedule and the selection of the artwork in sync? It's always bothered me that we have a delay factor in there, and I thought that they were unhappy with that or confused by it.
Some other staff may want to weigh in on this. I don't think we resolved how that would work. I did hear that concern. I think it is an issue. The DRC spoke to goals that I think we share, which are early involvement of an artist and true integration of artwork on site. So in terms of who's on first and that sort of thing, the kind of the sequence of review, I don't think that we necessarily resolve that, and I believe at this point what we're talking about is simply earliest possible notification to the developer, work with the developer between planning and art staff as early as possible. But I think it's it's a moving target as far as how we continue to improve. That's my take on it. I don't know if there's more.
Good evening, Carrie Lederer, curator at the Bedford Gallery. And I would like to add that, yeah, it is a continued goal to, as those projects come forward, to step forward with both an artist and the consequent project coming forward. There have been a couple of projects that you've seen that have been successful. I would call out Brio. And certainly, I think what's going on with Broadway right now. So I think we're getting closer to that goal of moving forward quicker. And I think that what's going on right now with the work that we're doing with the Public Art Master Plan and asking for the Arts Commission to approve the artist, the location, and the actual artwork will streamline that process. Because we're not trying to go flip-flop back and forth. We're getting some feedback from Design Review Commission, and then hopefully moving forward at a more excelled rate in the future. So I think this will help, that adjustment.
I'll just make one comment to that. I think we have to be careful not to rush it through either, so that we have plenty of time to really think about and work with an artist early and consistently through the process. And so I think that our stages that we've already approved on when the artist comes to us and what they provide to us at that time will help too. So, I don't know.
And I actually think the Arts Commission has been really successful with Broadway Plaza, just as a for instance, with the discussion about Joyce Shue, for instance, and the piece, the height, the interaction, the issues with materials. She was back and forth to the commission a few times to resolve those issues. So I think there's been some good work done on that, moving it forward, pulling back when you need to, but staying right on target in terms of timeline. Does that answer? No.
I don't agree with it, but I certainly think that's an answer.
Here's, if I can add, the feedback that I think we heard from the Design Review Commission, and we have a commissioner here in the audience that may want to chime in later, is yes, get an artist involved early in the process. And that's in the master plan. There's language that speaks to that. It was also, the DRC wants to hear from the developer where they're considering placing the art. And so we try to put language in there that put that more upfront so that it's not a back and forth conversation. Because when they come preliminarily to DRC, that's what they should be coming with. And then they can take that feedback and share that with you through staff so you can hear that. I thought that was their bigger concern, more so than involving the artist, because I think everybody agrees, how do we do that? We keep putting language in there. And so the way I see this is new, this is evolving. As we continue to do this new process, we will learn from DRC, we'll learn from us, and we can share that feedback. So what I'd like to do is, as we go through this, let's have a conversation about the actual applicant, but then we should also periodically check in and see how things are going, because if it's not working, we need to fix it. And so that's what we're committing to as staff, but we're trying to address as best we can those concerns we heard at the DRC meetings.
And I have a question for Commissioner Bologna. Is your concern for the delays regarding the developer's project and having things going smoothly through all of the processes, or is your concern more for the design review, the artist selection, that process?
My concern is for exactly what we have here, the selection of the artwork, and that the selection of the artwork be optimized so as to be able to, as I have seen in a number of projects, have the artwork no longer react to the project after it's been designed, but rather take advantage of the design and perhaps do something that's a little bit more innovative and come considerably more integrated into the design of the project, so that we don't end up with things that look like they were sort of tucked in wherever there was room left over. And that doesn't always happen, but it has happened, and I don't want the process to negate the possibility of having a better result.
Definitely.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a comment on page 4. Oh, has to be a question? Okay, let's see, I have to restate that. Would it be possible, on the page 4 of statement, attachment 2 at the top, would it be possible or to have regular communication with the Art Commission on the monies in the fund and accounting on it and how, what's happening with it, and to have us be a little bit more involved in or more knowledgeable about. This is nothing that would go in the PAMP, but it's just a comment on, it's a comment again. Would it be possible in the perfect world for us to see more regular statements about the Public Art Fund?
Yes.
Thank you.
I don't know that it's going to, well, quarterly, maybe it will fluctuate and it'll seem different. But I don't know that it's going to look a lot different from report to report.
Well, we never see it, so
Okay.
anything would be nice.
So we'll
That
be
was a comment,
Here's
for
what,
sure.
Yeah. Here's what else I would add is that we have not done an annual report on public art. On a regular basis, we do annual reports for Civic Arts, for Leisure Center, for the gallery. We're going to do an annual report on public art. And so you will see that at that time. We can always be available if you have a question to ask of us about how much is in the fund and what it's being used for. That's public, so we're happy to talk about that.
Right.
But we'll make that a more regular report, at least on an annual basis.
And I think to dovetail on Jane's question, I believe the reason why we need this, or the reason why I would like it, is so that we can evaluate one of our objectives of the plan, which was to increase that fund. So by being able to look at it on a more ongoing basis, I would think that would give us an ability. I would hope that we could have that information so we could do that. That's a question, yes. It is a question.
Can I piggyback on your comment or question? Yeah.
Question.
Would you be thinking that if the fund got to a certain point, it would trigger the possibility of the Art Commission suggesting that now would be a time to make a call and see if we can get, based on that budget, an artist to come up with a project for a specific location that's public art?
I think that's one of the possibilities, and I will say once again, that's why I think we need a strategic plan, so that is answered in advance, so we know when we get there what our plan is.
Thanks.
Any other questions? And now I ask for public comment. Anyone from the public would like to comment at this time? You can both have your turn. I promise.
We want to test the environment first. Good evening. I'm Michael Minaldi with John Muir Health. I'm Vice President for Development and Real Estate. You should have a letter in your packet that we submitted. One, I want to reiterate, we do appreciate all the work that's happened on the Public Art Master Plan, the amount of involvement in the community and feedback that was taken into consideration. And I'm not going to address all the issues in the letter, but there's two I want to really highlight that I think are probably the most important. One of them was related to, can excess value from a certain installation be rolled over to another project? And we outlined that we think that's important for, actually probably more for the city than for individual applicants. But if someone's doing a phased project and is willing to invest on the first phase for what is a much larger plan, we think it's valuable that you have that opportunity to present that to the city and get it approved in advance. So if we're doing 2 or 3 buildings or a phased set of buildings, that we could do the public art that's more comprehensive and do it in the first phase wherever is most appropriate and have agreement to do that. So we think that should be changed. And we do think that the language about the reduced fee for not-for-profits being restricted to owned facilities is not necessarily appropriate. Our mission is the same whether we're leasing or building a new building. And we have an example, it's not actually in Walnut Creek, it's in Walnut Creek zip code, where we just master leased a 144,000 square foot building, made a major investment in that. And that's really a financing mechanism for how we control a property, not what the mission is that we're providing, that I believe is why the exemptions are there, or the reduction is based on what the not-for-profit, or that fact you're doing a not-for-profit and you're doing community benefit, and we think that restriction should be removed and should really be tied to, are we doing it for ourselves? We're not going to be doing it for somebody else, and it's related directly to health care or whatever the not-for-profit mission is.
I have a quick question.
Vice Chair.
Yeah, it's something you just mentioned, and I just wanted a little bit of clarification because it's also in the letter. I wanted clarification on what it means exactly when you say in the first phase that meets the obligation for both phases. Is the obligation being construction cost?
Correct. So if we were doing two $25 million projects, and we knew one of them was going to be a few years later, but they're integrated in a way that we came up with a concept for the art that we actually wanted to put it all up front, that we have the ability, if we talk to you in advance, to actually do it that way. The way it's written now, if I invested more up front, I'd have to pay it, to do it again later, and I couldn't take that more strategic approach to how we do it.
Construction cost.
Yes.
That's the point. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have a question for Mr. Maltano?
All right, thank you.
Didn't quite get it.
Good evening, Mike Fotheringham, member of the Design Review Commission, and I'm speaking just as one voice of the DRC, but I did want to mention a couple of things after hearing your conversation about the PAMP, the master plan, the public art master plan. I do support the idea of pulling the criteria out of the plan itself, but certainly making it available as early on as possible to the development team and the design team so that they become aware that and encouraged to have public art integrated as part of their process. So at the meeting that some of you attended where we discussed the master plan, the point I tried to make in an effort to accelerate the process is that for a project to come to the DRC for the first time, we want to see locations for public art if the team is committed to public art. And I don't want to see that project until there is a commitment for a location, 1, 2, or 3, or 4, or 5, depending on the project. And Broadway Plaza is actually a good example because very early on, they had 3 or 4 or 5 locations for public art, and we prioritized it as a DRC. And I think there may have been a subcommittee involved at that time as well. But so as time goes on, we can all evaluate the appropriateness of the scale and the location with the actual artist that's involved. But I think that as soon as we can identify a location and give you an opinion about that location, then the sooner you can take control of the process and have fun with it. Because I think we all agree on DRC that turning the responsibility over to the Arts Commission for approving public art is the best way to go, and not try to walk that fence of who comes first, who has a say, and what should happen with public art. So I think it's definitely going in the right direction, and I support the notion of the recommendation that the DRC can, or offering an opinion about a location. But the only way we can do that is if we see the location early on. So again, that'll be up to staff. As to Joseph's comment about, well, I'll call you Joe because Joseph Gorney. I don't want to get the two of you confused. About whether an artist is integrated with the design team. Unfortunately, I don't know how you and I can control that process, that notion, other than to encourage it, as a lot of applicants have of getting artists involved early on and have them be, an integral part of the design team. So to that extent, I think we can all promote it, but I think it's something that we can't really control. So, questions?
I have a question. I don't know if it's for you or for Kevin, but you had mentioned the idea of that you don't want to see a project until they have identified possible sites. Can that be a requirement?
Well, I certainly think we can, again, I'm one voice. I didn't hear a lot of, I don't think it was unanimous among the commissioners, but I tried to emphasize it several times, and so I think it is a staff, certainly from the planning department, they can certainly ask, but I think it's the only way that we can really, because I think a lot of times the projects, we see the projects before you do. And so the sooner we can get an opinion about a location and a prioritization, then the sooner an artist can get on board, if they don't have an artist at that point in time. So anyway, Kevin, I don't mean to step on you.
I agree. I think the work that our staff has to do is going to be in conjunction with the CED staff, the planning staff. And as Mike said, this presumes that a developer is going to put art on site. If they're just contributing to it in lieu, or the Public Art Fund, it's not an issue.
Right.
So it's that project or that process. And so that's us working with the planning staff ahead of time and trying to make that case to the applicant that this is something that the DRC will expect. This group won't see that until it actually goes through DRC primarily. That's just us trying to encourage the planning staff to work with the applicants. So we will do that. We will have more integration between our departments as we move forward, and hope for the best. Right now, because we haven't done it yet. We haven't done it yet. And so, like I said, we're going to evaluate this.
Michael, since you've been on the Art Commission already in the past, and since you're familiar with developers coming in with the concept for a project at a study session, essentially asking the DRC, do you think if we use this approach, we will get support for following through with it, bringing you a design that uses this approach to that particular site? And it has its merits. Do you believe that if a developer could also include the concept for an art element with that it would help you and perhaps even our commission to be able to get a sense of whether this has any prospect of being successful in our view, and we would encourage it? I don't know how it can be done, but you certainly do it at the DRC level.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think what we would have to do as a DRC is we'd have to hold back and not endorse it too quickly, because you obviously would have to see it and take the lead. But if we had an art element and a location, it would certainly be easier to, provide a little bit more specific comments about the combination of the two. But obviously, staff would guide us to not approve anything. It would just be, an opinion about the location. If we saw something that was really off, we might talk about a different location for that artist. In other words, if the artist is known ahead of time and he or she is trying to find a location as part of that early study session, the conversation might go in that direction. But I think clearly DRC can only talk about location and scale, and that's all we want to talk about, because we want you guys to be the final word.
Then again, there is that situation like with Neiman Marcus where the art is integral to the building. So there is always that situation as well.
And I think in that case, we would say it looks great. It's, the location, it's interactive with the art. There's no question about it. It's still visible. It's still publicly accessible, visual from the pedestrian's perspective. So we would offer a positive opinion and send them on to you guys. So, yeah.
So if they had the question as to whether this is art or whether this is just decorating a building, they get that feedback from staff. They get that feedback from you. There would be no need for any of that to come to us. It would be determined long before it hit this commission whether you guys are just decorating your building. That's not public art.
Yeah, we would have an opinion about that if it was obvious that's, and I wouldn't use the term decorating as much as just art enhancement. or enhanced elements that are artistic, like super graphics, for example. That's a type of enhancement that's probably not public art, unless, again, the master plan addresses that. If it's a legitimate public artist who's been doing work for 15, 20 years, they have established reputation, then obviously we would look at it as public art. So that's the exception, but I know what you're referring to, and I think it would be pretty obvious as the presentation was being made, what kind of element it was. Okay.
Thank you. So now we move on to comments. Commissioner Bologna, do you have any comments?
My notes show that we started working on this at least 4 years ago. I'm glad that we're getting close to the finish line.
Commissioner Emanuel?
Not right now.
Mr. Vice? That's a guess.
I won't get used to that either.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I'm going to hold off for now.
Okay. And Commissioner Cowdery?
So, so if staff takes your silence as consent to move this forward, that's fine. I think this group has had many opportunities to provide comments. So our next step is to bring this to City Council on May 17th. We will continue to refine this a little bit to take some of the input that we've heard from John Muir and others when we bring this to Council. So you can look forward to it coming to that group. I will send you the agenda. You're welcome to come to the meeting if you so desire on the 17th. So thank you for your support.
So are we ready for a motion on this, or you don't have to? Okay.
Mm-hmm. And the next is the consideration of gift from BH Development of proposed public artwork.
Chair Polly, I would like to recuse myself for this item.
Thank you, Commissioner Bologna.
Good evening again. Stephen Huss, Public Arts Supervisor. So we are returning to the Arts Commission after introducing this item in the March meeting. This is a formal offer of this gift to the city. It was informational last month. Mr. Hirahara sends his regrets that he cannot be here. His work demands. He is opening Rooftop tomorrow, which is a restaurant bar, which has unparalleled views of Mount Diablo, according to the website. So everybody should check it out. But tomorrow is the opening, and he unfortunately cannot attend. So I'm here to present on his behalf. So Mr. Hirahara and BH Development propose to gift this work to the city of Walnut Creek. This is the proposed location, 1301 North Main, in front of the Vineyard Vines store. That's on the corner of North Main and Mount Diablo. And the light standard, the decorative light standard in the center of this image is the proposed attachment point for the human figure, which we'll look at again in a minute. Also wanted to call your attention to the fact that we would be installing a sign for the public art walking tour, and likely it would be on the very same pole at a little bit higher, several feet above the head of the human figure on this green pole in the center. This is a view back toward Mount Diablo to show you, just kind of get a sense of the sidewalk and the fact that the main crossing is a little bit beyond the site of the artwork, and the flower pots would be moved. So the project is proposed. Bullman with Bulldog would be a cast bronze sculpture. The human figure shown here would be patinaed, and the bulldog figure would be painted with a very durable auto body paint. The man's figure would rest and be attached. I'm not sure that it would actually attach, be resting on the light standard. And The figures will be sculpted pretty closely together, actually a little bit more closely than is indicated in this image. And the leash is going to be sculpted more thickly than the artist has indicated. This is in response to questions and comments from the Arts Commission at the last meeting. The work is going to be mounted flush with the sidewalk, which will increase its accessibility and its pedestrian level engagement. And it will be easier for folks to discover and interact with and explore at that level. So I'm going to leave this image on for a little bit. If the Arts Commission does accept the gift tonight, what you're doing is giving the BH Development the go-ahead to commission and to install the work. You would also be committing to accept the sculpture, which would be, the actual acceptance would formally occur after staff has reviewed the work following the installation and verified that it has been concluded as proposed without any defects or any other matters that we ask to be remedied. So you would be essentially committing to accept it. Staff would then be verifying that it had been installed correctly. Once staff accepts and gives notice to the donor, the work would become the responsibility of the city. And we talked a little bit about last month. There were some questions about insurance and so forth. It would be insured on a city policy, and that would cover all loss, damage, theft, or vandalism to the work. The recommended maintenance for the work is to wash and wax it 1 to 2 times a year, which is a relatively inexpensive process and fairly basic in terms of labor. It could be done by someone in the city if we arrange that. Otherwise, we would probably hire a contractor to do the work. The patina then on the human figure would last some 5 to 10 years at least, may need repatinaing at that time. If it does in fact need that, the estimated current cost for such a thing is about $300 to $500, and that could of course increase with inflation. With washing and waxing, that is the best care. We aren't recommending actually putting on a graffiti coating, which darkens the patina and is not really the best way to maintain the work. The best way to do that is to wax it and then to clean it periodically. And also would just observe that sculptures, though they can be tagged, sometimes it happens a lot less often than flat surfaces, especially murals. And when there's texture to a sculpture, it's just generally not perceived as a place that people want to tag. And also just to note, we would be propose to put the walking tour sign a little bit higher in this work. So Gerald Heffernan, I want to show you some of his past work. He's a very accomplished sculptor. He's based in Winters, California, which is west of Davis. He's known for his human-animal hybrid sculptures that are striking, humorous, yet thought-provoking. And Mr. Heffernan has completed many commissions in California and shown his work throughout the United States. So these are a few examples of work that he's installed around the state. So what we are asking for you to do today is to review the proposed artwork, to approve its installation in the public sidewalk at 1301 North Main, and to agree to accept the work once it has been completed and installed as a gift from BH Development that would be accessioned into the city's public art collection, with the contingency that the accepting the work is depending upon staff review and sign off.
Do we have any questions?
So, if we accept this gift, obviously we're accepting the maintenance and reapplying the patina expenses. So therefore, I would like to get that update on the Public Art Fund money that Jane asked for, because we just need to know we have enough money to do that.
Absolutely, yes. So the Public Art Fund, the estimated balance at the end of this fiscal year, which would be June 30, would be an amount we estimate at just about $327,000. And the ongoing commitments for the fund are just a couple. One is support for the position of Public Art Supervisor, and the other is for maintenance of the Hand of Peace. Those are the only ongoing commitments that we've noted. For this year and the next fiscal year, those commitments are budgeted at about 11% of the fund, so about $35,000 per year. We do anticipate some contributions soon to the in lieu fund, Public Art Fund. One notably would be the Marriott Residence Inn, and I was seeking to get a ballpark number but wasn't able to do that. We don't know that number yet. That should be coming in fairly soon.
I have a question as well. I want to preface the question too by saying thank you to you and to Mr. Heffernan and all of you who answered the questions that we had initially, especially addressing the concerns about the leash, the thickness, the space between the two figures, the patina, the paint, all those questions that we had. And I see here that the sculpture will reach, it says 6 feet high. Does that include the horns? And I know it sounds trivial, but the reason I ask is because I'm still concerned. I'm not as concerned about the leash as much anymore, but I am still concerned about the horns, being susceptible to someone wanting to yank them off, in an act of vandalism. So I'm just curious, approximately 6 feet, is it going to be a little taller? Or?
Well, the donors and the artists have described it as life size.
Okay.
And to me, life size is 6 feet tall because that's my height. So I just figure,
okay.
that's what he's talking about. But
As soon as it's your life size and not my life size.
How tall are your horns?
I look at the site. The photo mock-up looked to be about 6 feet compared against the site. So it is cast bronze. So that it's a solid piece. The head and the horns are a solid piece.
Right.
So it would have to be, sawed off, Sawzall or, welding equipment or something. So it would be a challenge to get them off.
Good.
I appreciate the concern. I'm sorry, Ms. Commissioner Manuel. Did you have a question?
I just want to know how tall your horns were.
I have another question. If you
I don't have any questions.
Assuming we approve this and accept it, what is the project timeline?
Yes, I think the earliest it would be installed would be fall of this year, and it could potentially be moved back depending on other pressing matters, really, for the developer. But we were looking at a fall install. Okay. So if approved here, then the donor could then proceed to do actually commission the work and get the sculpture started.
Any other questions? And so then, public comment?
My name is Carol Fowler, and I'm a Walnut Creek resident and a former arts commissioner, and in fact sat in Anita's chair several years in a row. But I'm really here. I'm a docent at Bedford Gallery, and what I do is the public art with Jane, and I share the public art tours, and we do that. And so I'd like to come and just give a word of support for this sculpture. I think it's a strong piece, and I think it's a really appropriate addition and a complement to what already exists in Walnut Creek. I was served on the committee for the two fountains that were chosen about 4 years ago. And Gerald Heffernan was one of, I believe, 17 artists. And his work really received a lot of favorable comment on that committee. And I feel that had we had 3 fountains to choose from, he may well have been one of the artists. I think his work is smart. This one is a little bit edgy. Most of them have a little more warm, cozy feeling. This one is a little edgier, but I think that's just fine and will be interesting for this corner in Walnut Creek. This is a tradition in art. There's superrealism or hyperrealism in contemporary art. Dwayne Hansen is the name that comes to my mind as the artist who's most famous for it. Jeff Koons has done it. Andrew Gormley, an English artist, has pieces like this all over European cities or Swiss meadows. And in fact, he does them in series with maybe 15 of them, and you go around and try to find them all. Within the context of Walnut Creek public art, it's a good figure also. Walnut Creek has a great deal of abstract art from, say, the 1980s when these pieces were placed. And typical public art of that time was something, an abstract piece, usually very graceful, sometimes very large, put down in a public plaza or in front of an office building. And we have several pieces like that. Walnut Creek also has, I think, several strong ceramic pieces that represent the Northern California ceramic tradition. They're in City Hall and on North Main and Civic Drive. There are several pieces that are integrated into architecture. The pieces on the mosaic circles on the Target store, and of course Ned Kahn's wind fins on the Neiman Marcus store. And this, interestingly enough, is across the street from that piece, which is it's an environmental art piece, and it's in many respects very minimal. And so that's another reason that this adds a nice note of frisson. But this fits more into the conceptual idea. It's more in the line of thinking of the Fountainhead or of Kristen Muller's piece in the library. So I think it serves a real place in Walnut Creek. And what I think is brilliant about it, it's so hard to place public art on a corner, and they've done it. So I think that's great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mike Fotheringham, member of the Design Review Commission. We did not have a chance to approve the location of this, but I like it.
Thank you for your comment.
Comments from us? I'm looking on page 3 of the agenda report on item number 5, this project. Down at the bottom, we talk about the goals, and I think that this piece meets those goals so well. In particular, I wanted to point out that it's embracing the opportunity for a public-private partnership, and which is so needed, and Mr. Hirohara is setting a standard here that I hope will be continued. And I again want to say how splendid it is that he's doing this, and that it's a great addition to the city. I think it will become a city mascot, and I heartily endorse the entire project.
I second that endorsement. I agree with Carol, your statements too, of it being edgy, conceptual, contemporary, and I think that's a really good point that you make, Jane, the fact that we are encouraging citizens to donate art of this kind to the city. It's something that is really noteworthy. I also love the location. I think it's fabulous that this piece will be so visible, interactive, eye level, and everyone that I'm so excited about the piece myself. I wish it were actually being installed now, but everyone I've shown this piece to has had really intense and mostly positive reactions, but even the not so positive are so fun. So that's important. That's important for an art piece to generate. So
I want to add to what Jane was saying too in terms of the goals. One of the goals is to create a significant public art attraction and placemaker for Walnut Creek, and I think this will definitely be a placemaker. People will be meeting by the bullman and the bulldog, or whatever they call it. I also agree that Mr. Hirohara is setting a standard not only by donating a piece of art, but also donating a piece of art that is very durable and will not have huge expenses to the city ongoing. And I think that's very important because we are setting a precedent here in accepting this into the city collection. And I think that it's great that we're not committing a huge expense to the public art fund moving forward, because then that would limit us being able to accept future gifts. So I applaud that standard that he has set as well.
I agree with everything that everyone is saying. And I also would like to comment about the generosity that he's showing. I think that he's going to set a standard for others in the community, other developers in the community to hopefully follow suit. In especially with projects where he was not required to have any public art at this development, the building that the piece will be placed in front of. But also, I'm excited every single time I go downtown and I'm, drive by or walk by Fountainhead, there's people around it. There's kids sitting and wandering around trying to splash in the water. And I'm I know this is an entirely different piece of art, but I'm envisioning people, again, like you said, meeting at the Bullman, or also taking photographs with it, hanging out with it, commenting on it, stopping, looking, either admiring or commenting. Otherwise, I'm very excited about this. So,
I just have one more comment. It's really nice that now that we have a head and a hand, we're getting the whole body. So I couldn't resist.
okay, so we have, we need a motion to approve the artwork, or?
I'll be glad to do that. I'd like to move that we approve the installation of the artwork in the public sidewalk at 1301 Main Street, as well as agree to accept the work once completed and installed and inspected by the city staff as a gift from BH Development to be accessioned into the city's public art collection.
I second that.
And roll.
Thank you, Commissioner Cowdery.
Yes.
Vice Chair Sagasti.
Yes.
Commissioner Manuel.
Yes.
And Chair Bradbury.
Yes.
Motion approved 4-0. Thank you.
While we're waiting for Commissioner Bologna. The next item is commission meeting schedule and communications. Trying to drag this up.
So you'll recall that your official meeting schedule calls for the Arts Commission to meet quarterly on the third Monday of, what's your schedule? January, April, July, and October. We made a change about a year ago, maybe, to the fourth Monday. So it's always been this awkward, because it's not your official meeting schedule, we call them special meetings, which has this weird language for public communications and otherwise. So we would like to, with your consent, officially change the meeting schedule to the fourth Monday of the months of January, April, July, and October at 6 p.m., assuming you want to keep that schedule. And then I can take your motion to the City Council for their official adoption, as they're cleaning up some other language with other commissions. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, receive any comments you might have about this, and then look for a motion to that effect.
I appreciate the flexibility. I've had the dilemma of having two meetings in this building at the same time on the same night when it's the third Monday. And I believe I just heard earlier that the third Monday is also a bit of a conflict for a couple of other organizations. So this helps a lot.
Any other comments or questions? Someone like to make a motion?
I move that we officially ask the council to change our meeting date to the fourth Monday of the quarter, the first month of the quarter.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
At 6 p.m.
Second.
Commissioner Manuel.
Yes.
Commissioner Cowdery.
Yes.
Commissioner Bologna.
Yes.
Vice Chair Sagasti.
Yes.
And Chair Bradbury.
Yes.
Motion approved 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, so now, next we move to reports on projects. First is the Walnut Creek Transit Village Public Art Plan and approved Parcel 1 artwork locations.
Good evening again. For the record, Stephen Huss, Public Art Supervisor. Just going to give you a brief introduction. So this is a project that has been pending for many years. The developer now on the project is BHV Center Street, and a friend to the City of Walnut Creek Arts Program, arts consultant Chandra Cerrito has been engaged by the developer. She's going to present a proposed public art plan for the Transit Village this evening. Now, this is an example of a project where in the future the public art locations will be approved by the Arts Commission. But as this is in process, currently they are being approved by the DRC. And in October of 2014, DRC approved the Parcel 1 sites that you're going to be looking at this evening. This is a study session, so no vote is required. We're just asking that you review and provide feedback. And the artist selection and project approvals will definitely come back to you later. So now I'm going to hand it off to the developer consultant.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the Commission. I'm Lauren Seaver. I'm with BHV Center Street Properties. We are the co-developer of the Walnut Creek Transit Village, along with Frank Arthur from Transit Village Associates, who's also here tonight. And we're also, you may remember, the developers of the landing at Walnut Creek, and came before you last quarter for final approval for our piece there that's going on the corner of Ignacio Valley Road and the off-ramp. So I was very excited to have the opportunity to work on the other two development sites on this corner, because I feel that it's a real opportunity, as we talked about with the Shane Dark piece, to make a statement and emphasize the commitment that Walnut Creek has to public art and create a real statement as people enter this city, either by car or as pedestrians or via BART. So I'll just give you a quick overview of the project site, and then I will turn it over to Chandra to tell you a bit more about our proposed art program. So here's the site, and we are currently focused on Parcel 1, which is, you'll see in the bottom left corner. And there are 3 phases of this project. Parcel 1 will be completed first, followed by 2, and then 3. Parcel 1 is a 900-stall parking garage that's meant to replace the current surface parking lots on Parcel 2 and 3. So we'll start construction first on Parcel 1, while continuing to use Parcels 2 and 3 for parking. And we expect that construction will start in Q1 of next year and continue on for about 14 months. After that, we will start construction on Parcels 2 and 3. Parcel 2 is a 358-unit apartment building with 8,700 square feet of retail. And Parcel 3 is 238 apartments with 12,000 feet of retail. So I will just take you on a quick tour of the renderings going around the project. So this is Parcel 2 looking south. And just to clarify, the art that we're discussing tonight does not cover Parcels 2 and 3. It's really only Parcel 1, so we will be back. So this is looking south towards the 358-unit apartment project on Parcel 2. Another view of Parcel 2 looking into a paseo. And both Parcels 2 and 3 are 2 separate buildings with internal paseos, so we'll have lots of opportunities for pedestrian-level artwork there. Parcel 3, this is the corner of California and Ignacio Valley Road. You can see the retail on the ground floor and then the residential units above. And then this is the internal paseo on Parcel 3, which is lined with retail and heads into the BART station. You can see we're looking right now from the BART station out towards California. You can see Mount Diablo a bit in the background. So now this is the first phase of the project that we're focused on here tonight. This is the corner that you would see as you're sitting at the off-ramp exit on Ignacio Valley Road to your left, where the current parking garage is now. So you can see in the front one of the proposed locations that was approved by design review. This is our secondary art location, and we'll propose something there. And then the other art location is on the facade of the building. We'll get there. This is the view of the building as you're exiting the fair gates from BART. And then one final shot of the building as you're looking south from the northeast corner. So I will now turn it over to Chandra.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Chandra Cerrito, the Public Art Advisor working with the developer on this project. And I just wanted to make sure that it is very clear, and I think that Lauren helped make it clear, that our primary interest tonight is to kind of give you an introduction to the project, or perhaps a reintroduction if you were involved many years ago, and also to get feedback as to our locations and potential directions for Parcel 1 in particular. And the reason is in part, or in a large part, due to the scheduling. So we kind of have to go full speed for Parcel 1, which is expected to be completed in Q2 of 2018. But we do have more time for Parcel 2 and 3. So we haven't really delved into the details of those two parcels as much. So those completion dates are expected in Q3 of 2020 and Q2 of 2021. So a little ways out at this point. And then for your purposes, this might be helpful just seeing what we anticipate as a public art process and schedule. So tonight we're here looking at art locations and types, which DRC has already seen. Apparently, I wasn't part of the process at that point, but had approved it in 2014. And in July, we hope, if all goes well, we'll be back here again with some selected artists for you to introduce you to and for your comment. And then we hope that they'll be able to finish final designs in October so that you can actually see final designs and approve them then, because we'll be aiming for an installation in spring of 2018, and we don't want the art to fall too far behind construction, making sure that we're making all that coordination possible. Whereas Parcel 2 and 3, essentially, they'll be the same steps, but we really haven't determined the dates for all of those processes. We just know the final installation dates. So with that in mind, I still thought it would be helpful to give you a super rough idea that there is certainly art throughout the project. That's how we would envision it. Again, tonight we honed in on Parcel 1. But this was just a sort of, brief overview of what could potentially happen on the other sites, the other parcels. And you can see that there are a couple locations that we've just quickly identified for Parcel 2 and several more for Parcel 3. It does appear that Parcel 3 will be the most active in terms of the public coming to and from BART to downtown. There's a lot of retail there. There are lots of sort of views from major thoroughfares. So Parcel 3 seems like it will be a real great place to have public art. One of the questions which we'll come to and would love maybe your feedback on is in dollars, there's actually more construction money in Parcel 2 than in Parcel 3. And in our minds, our art priorities might be swapped. And so we were hoping to have that flexibility to kind of mix up the funds. The total amount would be the same, but allocating perhaps more toward Parcel 3 and less toward Parcel 2 so that we can have, the art have the greatest impact for the most people. And also, there's just more opportunities, really, in Parcel 3. So that's just one thing you might want to comment on. So our overall plan objectives for the entire project to maximize the impact of the artwork, and as Lauren said, to appeal to pedestrians and all the vehicles that'll be going to and from BART, as well as the transit riding audiences. And of course, there will also be residents and retail shoppers who are either living there or shopping there. So those are the audience for these artworks. We'd like to feature engaging works by a variety of artists. The works could reflect the dynamic quality of the site. I mean, it is a transit center, lots of flow back and forth. We'd also like the overall art program to incorporate a lot of different media, just to keep a variety and have a lot of interest. And also just keeping in mind that some of the artworks will be viewed repeatedly by people who ride BART every day or people who live there, and just having that as one of the guiding factors for us. And we would like to focus on placing substantial works in priority places, just to get the most bang for the buck out of our budget. And then this last comment was kind of referring to what I brought up before, just considering the site holistically and allocating artworks to the highest impact locations, whether or not they were tied to the funding for that particular parcel. So getting down to parcel 1, which is really what we were hoping to get your feedback on tonight. This is a plan view showing the 2 locations for that DRC had reviewed for artworks, and I have another slide to show you it in more of a rendering. So we're calling them Site A1 and Site A2. So A2 is what you had seen in the previous slide with a little placeholder of a sculpture, and A1 is on the facade of the building. And here's A1. So we're looking at, again, from if you had left BART and we're heading to the parking garage, this is the view that you would have. Also, if you were coming from Ignacio Valley Road in your car, you'd be driving under the artwork as you entered into the garage. So it's sort of this entrance point as well. So it's the locations on the facade itself above the entrance. And the area shown is approximately 30 by 30 feet. And this could be extended by an artist if they wanted, but that's the area that we're showing and the primary location. And of course, the visibility will be by the drivers, as well as drivers in their vehicles entering from YVR and pedestrians leaving BART. And also, when you're on the BART platform waiting for your train, this will be visible, which will be a fun thing to kind of play with. So we see a variety of possibilities for this particular site. Could be wall-mounted sculpture, relief sculpture, mural, or mosaic. We're very aware that the building has a lot of detailing in itself, and so something bold and that stands apart from all of the textures of the building is probably a way that could make that work. And here is location A2. So it's in this landscaped area that you would see coming off of 680 when you're right there getting off the freeway. And it will be a small landscaped area. Behind it is a small police station, and the landscaping wall in front will most likely have the sort of entrance signage for the project. And we've already discussed that the area right now feels a little compressed, and so I wanted to make sure there's room for, a variety of art. I don't think it'll ever be huge in terms of footprint, but the architect has been working out ideas of perhaps extending the wall a little bit or terracing so that there's a little more breathing space for some art there. We anticipate the height just to be between 10 and 15 feet high, which is this red marker is roughly 15 feet. And again, high visibility by drivers from YVR coming off of 680, as well as pedestrians who might be entering BART from this part of town. And this definitely lends itself to freestanding sculpture. And again, the scale we already talked about. We're very conscious, especially having worked on the other project, which is across the street, the landing, and the Shane dark sculpture, that we would want this sculpture to complement it. And most likely, once we get an artist on board, they're really going to help lead the charge on how to complement it well. But my instinct is that it's probably going to want to contrast with it and not, be too similar. So that's all we had for our presentation. Be happy to take any questions.
My reaction to this very, very preliminary location A2 and what we saw before for a scaled sculpture there. Feels like it's, again, almost crowded off over the edge of the wall. I don't know exactly when you're going to be done with the site plan to know what the offset is between the wall and the building. But when I look at this illustration, my first impression is, my God, the police station is a pedestal. Put the sculpture on the roof. Has that ever been considered? I mean, it's the perfect pedestal. It's up there at a nice height. If my reaction is, if that were the proposal in order to solve two problems at once, and it was kind of an innovative thing that you were wondering whether we would be interested in, I would be interested in that.
Well, that's an interesting question. I've been only brought onto this project in the last few months, and so in a sense I inherited the sites, and so I can't tell you any discussion that happened around why these sites were chosen or if that was considered. But it's an interesting thought.
That was actually going to be one of my questions. The design and the structure of this plan are from the previous developer?
That's correct.
And so that the art site selections were also done for that developer?
The ones that I'm showing you, yes, the parcel 1 sites were through the other developer.
And has design review looked at it since the new developer came on board?
They haven't, but nothing has changed since the approval.
So we were not commissioners at the time of the first proposal. I don't believe we were, and so that's why I'm asking these questions. Was the architecture and the plan for the whole village has that been carried over to you, to the new developer?
It has, and actually our partner Frank has been here. He's been the developer the whole time, so we're only part of the new team. But Frank is the consistent thread.
Good evening. I'm Frank Arthur. We started the development in 2000 and 2001. Our company, Walnut Creek Transit Lifestyle Associates, has been the developer since then. We have, in fact, had 3 partners, and BHV Center Street is our most recent partner, but the developer, the developer has been the same throughout the entire process, and there has been relatively little difference in the architecture. We have had all 3 phases of the project, what we've shown is Parcel 1, Parcel 2, and Parcel 3, go through design review and had approval, including the various locations. We're very happy to get your feedback, although when we went through, the locations were the purview of the Design Review Commission, and as far as placing it on top of the police station, very interesting. We hadn't that hadn't been considered previously, but we're very happy to explore any other concepts that you have. What our purpose was to have artwork that related to the site and was available to the various constituents, to the people driving, to the people walking, to the people on BART, as well as our own residents. So that's what we've intended throughout this. It was our feeling that a 10 to 12 foot sculpture at that particular corner was fairly significant. As one person said, it's not his height; it's twice his height. But we're very happy to look at other thoughts. We felt that when this goes back, way back. A lot of our thinking on this project, as well as Bart's thinking, was to make things more people-oriented rather than massive edifices that could be viewed from the freeway or something. So we really never were thinking about things that were only oriented toward the either Ignacio Valley Road or the freeway. We always thought we'd like to make things people scale. So happy to answer any other questions, but
I have a question. So the stars, the proposed sites, are those all the options, or are those definitely all going to become actual sites for artwork?
sure.
Those are just initial options. So what I would like to do is when we are working on parcel 2 and parcel 3 is come back to you with a more specific sort of menu of potential sites. This is sort of a quick look at it. So the yellow stars are the ones that are kind of fixed, and the other ones are off top of our heads, kind of initial thinking, which we'd like to delve into and would be coming back to you with an actual plan of potential sites.
So I'm going to try to figure out how to make this a question and not a comment. But when I look at this, if we're definitely going to have the 2 yellow stars, and there may be the red star across the little entranceway there, plus we have Shane Dark across the street, does anybody else feel like they're getting overwhelmed? I mean, I'm just getting a little like, which way do I look? And I'm supposed to be, so when you talked about the holistic and looking at priority locations, to me, I would want you to consider, or have you considered, getting rid of the police station star and just focusing on the red star area. So, looking at the site as a whole, as you're coming in, you have the big 30 by 30 on the garage. You have potential to do something pretty significant on that, which looks like grass. It's almost like it's, without knowing what might go there, it's hard to know whether it's too much.
I think that's a good point. I think it's something we've actually already discussed. I know that the 2 yellow stars have been approved, and the others haven't really. I think we have more leeway with those. I don't know if you feel. I think what you suggested is one thing we could go back and discuss, and we had discussed at one point. The other idea, and I don't know if this would solve the same question, is instead of having the red star that's across the way, just leave the yellow star at the police station. So there's not that jumble of too many things happening.
Was there a study group assembled for this site? Like a commissioner, and sort of like what was done for Broadway Plaza or for the
as far as I know, not.
Safeway.
I think Jane is referring to like a subcommittee that had DRC members and Art Commission members. And I think I've only been through that process on 2 projects. This was not one of them.
Sorry. The answer is yes, but it was some time ago. So I'm not sure if any of you were there, but yes, we did have study sessions up on the 3rd floor with all of the various commissions. But as I mentioned before, we really don't have an issue with comments and suggestions on particular locations. Now, what is important, as Lauren mentioned before, is we'd like to get going, and we would like to start this project within a year. And so that's what is important to us. We think it's important to the city as well. So we would like to solidify what locations would be on what we call Parcel 1. And if you would like to suggest that one of those sites would be better served somewhere else, we're happy to listen. but we really need to get some consensus so that we can move forward and begin what we think is a very exciting project for the city.
Is there a written report or consensus or some result of the study that was done?
Well, I'm not sure it was a study. There were work sessions.
Work session.
That were done.
A report on that?
Well, you'd have to ask your planning staff because they organized them. And council members were there as well as the various commissions. So yes, I would assume that there certainly were reports available for that.
We could find that. Frank, do you know when that was roughly? And this would have been a long time ago, right?
I would suggest 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay, so we can look and see that for you if the commissioners would like to see
I'd
that.
like to see it.
Chip Griffin and Steve Buckley would be the best people to contact.
Would you like me to take a whack at answering your question? I was on that group. And among the other things that were studied, there were 2 other locations for parcel 1 that were suggested. One was at the extreme western edge of that development, and one was out in the parking lot behind where the buses turn around. And I believe that they were considered as not as attractive as the 2 that are shown right now, and therefore the strongest 2 are the ones that we see.
Well, and you probably didn't know at the time that you would have an art piece across the street, the Shane Dark piece that's coming up. So
That's also very true.
I have a question. Are there any photographs? Often we see photographs of the existing location because the orientation of it, I think, is important for us to see. So
Not in the presentation, but we could certainly get some.
I have a question, and it's related to what the gentleman from John Muir was asking, which I think is kind of a similar thing here, kind of the idea of a cumulative project and paying it forward. So if they only went with one piece, could they take the money from Site 1 to use for Site 2 and vice versa, Site 2 costs for Site 3?
I think the opportunity to have this discussion, you're talking about parcel 2 and parcel 3, is that right? And you're proposing to come back in a year, 2 years, I can't remember the timeline for that discussion.
It's within, it's a year to 2 years at the max.
So what I'd suggest is, as John Muir's suggestion, council will consider that as part of their conversation. So once we get some direction on that, we'll know how to answer that question for this project. So that'll come first, and then we'll be able to address that here. But I think you're right. That is the same question.
Do you have some idea as to what the public art fee is for the whole village?
Neighborhood of 1.5 million, right? 1.5 million.
any other questions? And do we have any public comments? Thank you. So we can go to our comments.
Well, I'll start it off. I have no wish to delay anything, so I don't want us to get into some long month, several months of study. But I feel that I don't have a feeling for the entire property. I don't have a feeling for what the sentiments were, the goals. I don't like the idea of just approving parcel 1 without having some good feeling and direction about the other two parcels. And I think it has to be rethought a little bit in terms of the Shane Dark project. So those are just my initial thoughts.
I will piggyback on that. I agree, and I think your comment about looking at the whole site as one is really the best way to maximize the art dollars. And if we kind of piece it all apart, we're potentially missing the possibility of having a really significant placemaking piece in Walnut Creek. And I keep thinking of Chicago, but and the Cloud Gate or the Jelly Bean, whatever you want to call it. Where it's so interactive, and every time you come up to it, it's a completely different piece of art. And when you were talking about wanting pieces that are dynamic, and if people are coming here every day, it would be great to have that type of placemaking piece where it is different every single time you come up to it based on the weather or who's around it, etc. So I really would hope that, I also don't want to slow anything down, but I really would hold off on that second little yellow star right next to the road and make your piece for the phase parcel 1 on the garage and save that budget if it's possible for the cumulative project overall. That would be my recommendation, because I don't want to see us go back and say, oh, I wish we had more of that $1.5 million to do something significant when we get to parcel 2 and parcel 3.
Vice Chair,
Do
do you have a comment?
Can we do that under could we do that?
Well, I think what Mr. Safini is saying is that we have to wait.
We have to
until
wait, and that would
council-
hold things up?
Well, just for clarity, the applicant is looking for feedback on what the locations. No,
Right.
that's already been approved, right? You're just looking for comments on what the concepts could be for those sites, right? For those two locations. So if the comments are, we can't think of anything good for sites, whatever it was, 1A or 1B, I suppose that could be a comment. But
I see.
But the sites have already been determined.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, because I'm also looking at the whole, and I guess, I mean, in kind of like what you were saying, Glynis, is I'm looking at the whole rather than in parcels, and I'm noticing that the proposed art locations for the other two parcels, everything's very east heavy, and I know that there won't be as much traffic, whether pedestrian, car, or public transit, to the west, but and I am also very much in agreement. I don't want to hold up the process, but gee, if we've got to go with 2 stars to parcel 1, then why, what about that little location over to the west? There is still a lot of traffic in that direction. I know people going towards the North Main, San Luis, Buena Vista streets, all of that. I don't know. I'm looking at the whole, and that's why I'm hesitating a little bit about the 2 sites. But they're approved.
Well, I think that's part of the key, that they have been approved, and the philosophy of this project has been established. So, for example, just in response to what Commissioner Cowdery says, yeah, a bean would be great, but this is a living situation. There are a lot of residences in here, and if you plow a lot of money into some gigantic piece, you're changing the concept of the village and art meandering through the village. So I think that's one of the reasons why it would be good for us to see the report. I could go along with approving the star on the wall, and my inclination, I think, after I've read this report, which shouldn't take too long to read, is that maybe the other yellow star be eliminated. I don't think it's a particularly attractive little spot.
And to dovetail on what you're saying again, I think we have to keep coming back to the fact that this was all pre-Shane Dark, and Shane Dark changes everything, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of that spot. And also, just to clarify, when I bring up the sculpture from Chicago, size wasn't necessarily the indication, but just more the way that it's very dynamic.
The interaction.
And the interaction with it, yeah.
So my comment is, I basically agree with what everybody is saying. I have an issue with the crowded location in front of the police department. I think that it would be wonderful if the monies could be focused elsewhere, because I just don't. And that's one of the reasons why I'm interested in seeing a photograph of the site, because I keep wanting to say, okay, so what does that look like with the BART tracks coming over and the landing sculpture on this side, and an awful lot of distracting buildings. I understand what you were saying in terms of it being pedestrian friendly, but I don't see that as a pedestrian location other than people coming and going in and out of the police station. So I agree that I just think that it seems like an awkward location, or not awkward, but just something that's not necessary. I do like the comment that Commissioner Bologna made in terms of getting it up on the roof, so as a possibility, and I know that's changing the location. But again, I agree with I agree with Commissioner Emanuel saying that the wall piece makes perfect sense, up on the building. But in front of the police station, that one just doesn't make any sense to me.
There's got to be some way to work around the funds, and we're only talking till June 2nd, right? Is when we'll know. We'll probably know by May 17th whether or not the ability to kind of pay it forward is there. If it's not, it seems like there should be some other workaround, like a contribution to the Public Art Fund that would be designated for the BART project. It seems like there's got to be some way to work around that.
Well, another way to look at this, and I can't speak for the applicant, is oftentimes, I know there's some examples where DRC has approved several sites for a location, and that doesn't mean that the applicant or developer puts art on all of those sites. The Laconia, or whatever it's called now, I can't remember, had a few parcels identified by DRC, and they narrowed it down to 2 and then narrowed it down to 1. So that may be something that, with your feedback, they could take that to.
Same with Broadway Plaza. I believe there was a lot more sites approved.
Commissioner Bologna.
I want to start off by saying I'm in complete agreement with Chandra's list of objectives that she started the presentation with. I think that's the guide. Everything is judged against that guideline, and I think it's speaking more as an architect than an artist. Looking at the site plan and looking at the way the police facility projects out toward the corner, feels like it's taking priority on that corner, and that the art would have to be very cleverly set there to not feel like it was the second best thing going on there. At this scale, it's hard to confirm that, but it's leaning that direction, and so I'm not optimistic either that it would be appreciated as much there. This is a transit village, and I'm thinking more about the transit part at that side, and the cars and all the stuff that's going on at that intersection, and that we don't have as many opportunities to appreciate something there unless it's done differently than what was shown as a single piece. The way we would on the opposite 2 corners, where they really will stand out. So I'd hate to see money spent on something which doesn't produce anything special. On the other hand, I'd be the first person to suggest that doing something other than a piece of sculpture planted in the landscape at that point and shoved up against the wall is the best solution. If there was something that was done innovatively there, perhaps something that incorporates a lighting effect or something which sort of turns the corner and wraps around the corner without necessarily saying I'm anchoring the corner, could be spectacular there. It could be clever as heck and not even expensive, but work with the corner and work with the other things that are taking priority there, which is the building. So I'm not suggesting that it can't be done, and I'm not suggesting that it won't work, but I am suggesting that what we've seen so far is pointing toward, it's not going to be very nice.
Any other comments?
I just want to confirm that the applicant got what they were looking for in terms of comments.
Is it okay to ask
information.
another question for clarification? I think we really understand what you've said, and I think we've actually had discussions similar to that. And I want to know if these two options are something we could consider. One would be just focusing on the facade piece, which is A1, and using the entire budget allocated for parcel 1 there, or second option, doing just the facade piece, and if it doesn't use up all of our parcel 1 money, which is what I know you can't answer yet, taking the remainder and reserving it for a future parcel. So I just wanted to be clear that those might be things that we could consider, especially the second one only pending it's legally possible.
Certainly, I think the answer to the first question is yes, and that's happened before. Number 2 is maybe, but we have interest in that. Either, as I think Commissioner Cowdery said, it could be contribution to the in lieu fund, the public art fund. That difference could be we have that ability now, and then depending on what the council does on May 17th, there may be an opportunity to do the second part of that. So that's still a maybe, but it's not a no.
Kevin, is that to say that you feel you've gotten the commission's support for bringing that message to the council and saying that we would encourage that also if they should choose, we think it's a wise thing to
Well, I didn't hear otherwise when John Muir was here, so certainly if you have other thoughts about that, I'd be happy, even though it's kind of out of order, I'd be happy to hear that.
So just to clarify, because I thought, and maybe I just made this up in my head, but I thought you were saying that you were kind of making that recommendation to the city council that would be a possibility. That's why I don't think we commented on it, because it seemed like it was a...
That'll be something that, it may not be a recommendation, but it's certainly something we'll take forward to them to consider. I'm trying not to make too many new recommendations from the staff level, but we will share that with the council so they can have that in front of them. We haven't had that before, to my knowledge, Carrie. We haven't seen that. We had that request from Hall Equities to do that at Center Place South, which didn't pan out. It's intriguing. We just haven't explored that a whole lot at the staff level, but it's something we will carry forward just so the council has that. So I'd be happy to share with them if this is a consensus from the commission that that's something you have interest in. We can focus on this project. Mm-hmm. And say you have interest in here, and I can extrapolate that for the master plan.
And obviously, some of it has to come down to what the timeline is. I mean, there might be a definition of not to exceed
X number of years.
Yeah.
I would definitely be interested in having that as something that the council should consider, because it makes an amazing amount of sense to be able to have that flexibility from phased projects.
And it would hopefully realize a much more cohesive and better quality project, I would think.
Mm-hmm. I would like a report from the Public Art Department on that issue, because we're talking a couple of different things here. We're talking one major project here, but in the past with other people who have come before us, it's one side of town and another side of town, and that's a different issue in moving monies forward. So I think there's a bit of a slippery slope, and I think we need more clarity on that.
Any other comments on that particular issue of the phasing and sharing of funds? Okay. So the next item then would be Civic Arts Education Annual Report. Thank you for your presentation. It's very nice.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Linda Johnson, Civic Arts Education Program Manager, and this is the Civic Arts Education Annual Report for the calendar year 2015. So in 2015, that was a year of a lot of change and restructuring at Civic Arts. So during that year, our strategic direction began to take shape. You'll hear more about that. Our community participation was strong and expanded. We had some exciting new program offerings that we'll talk about later. The restructuring of our staff team to more carefully address the arts education needs of the community was completed, and our new name and brand was developed, and more on that later. So here's a program overview of some key data about Civic Arts Education. About 7,700 people took classes and workshops. About 912 participated in outreach activities, and there was about 8,600 total participants, which was 9% more than the year before. We provided work for 125 teaching artists in the community. And down here you can see data about participants, who they are, what their ages are, and where they live. So usually our participation is about half adults and half children. This year it was a little bit slightly more skewed towards the adult side, so that's where some of our growth occurred. Participants broke down, as they have in other years, about half from Walnut Creek and half from other communities. This year we broke out all the communities that people are coming from, so you can see this pie chart represents the other half of the participants, which is really a very significant number. So for instance, if there's 4%, that's a few hundred people that are coming from communities like Oakland and Orinda. And you can see that the community that participates very heavily in our programs is Concord. And most of the other communities are communities in Contra Costa County. So we have many really key members of our staff at Civic Arts, but just to simplify things, and knowing that we've been through a lot of restructuring and brought in a lot of new staff on board, here's a snapshot of our program team. So Miley Ogasawara oversees our preschools and supervises our coordinators and thus our programming day to day. Gregory Byard is our program coordinator who manages the ceramics facility and education at ceramics. We are currently hiring a program coordinator who oversees youth and adult classes and workshops, and we also have a camps coordinator who's not listed here. Jackie Jordan oversees our administrative team, so those are the wonderful people who take registrations and handle all the day-to-day details. Corey Johnson is our program assistant for outreach, so she both kind of masterminds our community outreach and does coordination for any community outreach programs that we do. And lastly, Courtney Clark is our new marketing coordinator who oversees our marketing plan and works very closely with Corey to reach out to the community. So here's more information about participation in our classes and workshops. So we broke down kind of how people break out when they're participating in our classes and workshops. For instance, the top pie chart is about discipline. So you can see that our two big disciplines are drawing, painting, and printmaking, and ceramics, followed up by music and dance. Camps and preschools, while they're smaller slices of the pie, people participate in those very intensively. So if this was a chart of hours, there would be very heavy representation of folks in there. And then you can see the rest of our program offerings, some of which have a lot of very loyal participants, but are smaller groups, such as Fiber Arts is a great example. And then you can see how our programs break down. Sorry, that big pie piece is a little bit hard to read under the types of programs. So the major program type is the classes and workshops, which are usually 10 weeks long. Our workshops and makers series, which are one-day workshops that often either provide a point of entry or a way to deepen artistic process, have been growing. And then we have our preschools, year-long programs, and camps. So our year-long programs are also very intensive programs in areas like music and performing arts that people sign up for a whole year. The chart on the right shows all of our program areas and how they have done year over year. So you can see that ceramics, for instance, had major growth. So did camps in terms of numbers of registrations. Glass was another one. Drawing and painting was down a little bit over the prior year, as was drama. So some of the highlights from our year in programming were a large increase in ceramics participation. We had a new leader in Gregory for our ceramics studio who brought with him a lot of energy and lots of new offerings. So the participation in the ceramics studio has increased dramatically. Sometimes quarter over quarter will be as much as 25%, to the point where we often have maxed out class slots and space in the studio. Our preschool curriculum has been strengthened to really focus on the areas that are at the heart of our program, like documentation of student work and the Reggio Emilia model and arts integration. And knowing that we have 3 different program sites, often we have streamlined policies and the way we talk about our preschools to make them more effective as we present them to the community and work with our staff. Our arts adventures and academic camps, which next year will be called Camp Community Arts, have been expanded from 5 weeks to 8 weeks, hence the greater enrollment, and also been made longer so that they're more responsive to the needs of working parents. We have an increased diversity of course offerings, so some examples of things that were introduced in 2015 that have been popular are sewing classes, as well as digital media classes, new short-term early childhood education classes as well. And then our one-day classes and workshops have proved to be very popular, and we've expanded those in order to provide a point of entry for community members to get involved at Civic Arts, or for working adults who have less time to be able to engage with an art form when maybe they can't commit to a 10-week class. So I wanted to give an idea of how we kind of compare in the Bay Area arts ecosystem as an organization that provides community arts education workshops and classes. As far as our staff has understood from the research that we've done, we're the largest purveyor of classes like this in the Bay Area. And as you can see, it's really by far, when you look at other similar programs to us that are located in similar sized communities. So, you know, it's almost 8,000 as compared to 3,000 and 2,000. One important thing is that those other organizations are often ahead of us in terms of doing outreach programming that is impacting the community in sites away from the Arts Center or providing easy points of entry for the community. So they may have lower numbers here, but may have much higher numbers based on, for instance, after-school programming that they're doing in the community, or an art truck that goes around engaging people at street fairs. So that's something that we are looking to as we continue our planning for Civic Arts. So, and that is all about community engagement. So that's about stronger partnerships, expanding the number of partners that we have. We added in 2015 new staff members that are dedicated to marketing and outreach, Corey and Courtney. Launching new outreach and marketing plans. So we have detailed plans in each of those areas that delineate the ways we want to prioritize making our center more inclusive for the community. And we'll talk more about branding later, but we held focus groups for our new name and visual identity. And below you'll see an example of our new social media look, and which has been greatly expanded, and that's one of our Instagram posts. So this is the part where we talk about marketing and branding. Here is a sneak peek at our new brand for Civic Arts, which is Center for Community Arts, as it will be known in 2016, and is an entire brand system with multiple marks, colors, and a very distinct visual identity. So the brand development process was a process that included the community by getting staff, partner, and community members involved in focus groups and surveys. And during that process, a new name was settled on, which I know you've heard about before, Center for Community Arts, which is going to launch in summer 2016 around the time people begin registering for fall classes. So they'll begin to see that roll out, and then a new website will roll out in the fall that will reflect the new brand. The attributes that our brand designer focused on after hearing so much from the community were friendly, welcoming, and experienced. And as I said, it's a brand system with multiple kind of ways that we can use it in different contexts and with different looks. Most of the presentation that we do will show teachers and students interacting, as well as colorful textures like the ones that you've seen throughout this presentation, because those are some of the things that our students and community members talked about as being so important and meaningful to them about our organization. And we collaborated with an experienced brand designer, Front Group Design, who you'll hear a little more about later in the evening as well. So that goes hand in hand with our expanded marketing efforts. And the goal of those is increased community participation, especially by people who may not be reached by our center already. We've been planning the launch of our new brand and engaging the community more through an expanded social media presence, planning expanded advertising, and better ways to use our current assets like our email lists. On the community outreach side, our goal is to welcome everyone to Civic Arts and make it a warm and inclusive place, or Center for Community Arts as it will be this summer. We want to see greater inclusion of those who are underserved by our program, and that includes low-income community members, working age adults, and teens, which I think will be greatly supported by the locating of the new Contra Costa Performing Arts High School right across the street from our center. We have been working on and implementing increased visibility at community events like Oktoberfest or First Wednesdays, and providing free and affordable point of entry experiences like our Family Art Day and Festival. We have a Family Art Festival coming up on May 8th that we invite everyone to attend. And we've been hard at work developing new partnerships like one with the Trinity Center, reaching out to First Five sites to do outreach for financial aid and getting folks involved in programs. Same with affordable housing communities, the Bancroft Gardens, and others. So with the Bancroft Gardens, we've been planning since 2015, working collaboratively on a wall, a mosaic wall that will be a community build that will be accompanying their new building that is being built at the garden. At Trinity Center, we've been planning a partnership that just began that involved Creative Tuesdays for their residents once a month. And they just began doing fiber arts with one of our instructors and had a wonderful time. So also continuing to strengthen our partnerships with our support groups, the Friends of Civic Arts Education and the Clay Arts Guild, who together have supported us with equipment and financial aid in very substantial amounts. So as we go into and have begun 2016, what's next? So 2016 is the year we'll be launching the Center for Community Arts. We'll be completing our strategic plan. We actually had a strategic planning session today, and we know that we're focused on high-quality arts learning and placing that at the center of what we do, and also making our centers inclusive, welcoming places for the community. As I said, we'll be launching our new name and brand. We'll be focusing on improving the user experience for our studios and our public spaces. So that includes things like redesigning our lobby at Shadelands, looking at the possibilities of making our spaces more indoor-outdoor spaces by using the grounds at Shadelands and more effectively considering a possible redesign. And then continuing to strengthen and build partnerships, for instance, with local schools, and to develop outreach programming like some pilot after-school programs with local schools. And then look at strengthening and expanding key program areas like music, where we're looking to kind of make that program more robust and more of a centerpiece of our program. Camps, theater, making our dance program kind of more diverse in the art forms of dance that we offer. And that is my presentation. Questions?
A branding question. Maybe it's just because I didn't see the word, but how does the name of the city, Walnut Creek, tie in with the Center for Community Arts? Is that intended to be left off on purpose, or would that be added on only in certain situations? I didn't see it in the brochure.
Yes, so we have multiple kind of lockups of our brand. So there's multiple ways that we can present our brand depending on the situation that we're in. And ultimately, we'll be able to have different brand marks that, for instance, tie into different disciplines. And the city of Walnut Creek is one of those cases where there's a version of the brand that has Walnut Creek in it that will be used in certain situations. We wanted to respect the fact that it's a regional program and that some people may interact with it as such, but then at other times people may be primarily interacting with it as citizens of Walnut Creek, and to be able to use the brand in all the different situations that we run across.
I know it's kind of new to be using e-blasts and Instagrams and all that stuff. It'll always be new to me, but do you have any way of evaluating whether that is bringing new students?
So our marketing coordinator is really good at using data, and we have a monthly meeting where she shares data, kind of a dashboard with us of the stats on various interactions with our social media, our website, our e-blasts, etc. And many of those lead to clicks that go into our registration system or onto our website. And at the same time, we've seen registration growing. Of course, it's always difficult to kind of tease out all those factors because there's so much going on. You know, people right now love ceramics just in the country in general. And so part of the growth in ceramics could be because of that. Part of it could be because the economy is booming, and part of it could be because we're getting better at reaching out to people. So we're looking at, different ways in the future to kind of take the information that we're gathering now as a baseline and then ask people more specific questions about how did you hear about the class? We actually do gather that information in our surveys. Currently, a few % hear about it from social media, and a lot of people hear about it from people they know or the catalog. However, there's kind of that saying of 3 times 3 ways, and people kind of identify one way they've heard about something, but often they need to hear about it in multiple ways for it to start to sink in.
Thank you. Could you please expand a little bit more on what you mean by working in public spaces and also developing outreach programming? I know you said something about after-school programs and such.
So working in public spaces?
Yes, you said focusing on place, so studios, public spaces, using the public space a little bit better outside of shadelands, and possibly you said even redesign.
Right. So, we are working on an RFP for redesigning our public areas at shadelands to make them more kind of engaging, colorful, kind of to reflect our brand better, like welcoming and colorful. And that would, for instance, we toured some other art centers. We actually visited a few different art centers this year, and a lot of them had much more interactive ways that the public was able to kind of be in those art centers. So, for instance, being able to see who's the staff, who are the teaching artists, have different ways of displaying information that's more meaningful to people so that they can really quickly connect with what we're offering. Have more interactive types of exhibits that allow people to sort of place themselves into the life of the art center rather than kind of being the person who's sitting at the table waiting for their child to get done with the class. And then when it comes to indoor-outdoor space, that's an idea we've just begun to discuss, but we often see people spending time outside, but we don't really have any designated spaces outside for people. So it's almost like picturing that parklet, that could be in front of, where my office is at the front of the center, or having a patio area outside of the annexes at Shadelands. There's, I'm sure a great landscape designer could do wonders with the site, which is mostly devoted to cars at this point. The concept, I think, was for people to kind of drive up in cars and go inside the center, but it's worth a look at that idea to see if there's a better way to use that outdoor space.
Well, and one of the reasons I asked is because I was imagining classes taking place outside, and you actually hit the nail on the head, and I may have suggested this to you before, so I'm sorry if I have, but specifically, as you mentioned, a lot of people waiting for their kids to get out of the class, like I was doing when my daughter was taking the drama classes, and there's that lobby space, and there were parents there with other kids who weren't taking the classes, just waiting for siblings, and I thought this would be a really good opportunity to have maybe even a 15-minute sample lesson in where they could try something, painting or drawing or something, and give what their appetite for more maybe, either geared towards the kids, toward the adults, or both, and maybe get them to enroll in classes that way. So I was imagining that when you said that, redesigning the spaces and maybe profiting from the fact that there's always people hanging out.
There's
and
a captive audience of people
right.
waiting, yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Great ideas.
So many new exciting ideas. It's great to hear. And I love the idea of the one-day classes for the point of entry. I think it appeals on so many different levels. I do have a couple questions. You mentioned the strategic plan. When will that become a public document?
So currently we've gone through 2 meetings with our strategic planning consultant, and the next steps are for our staff to kind of do the nitty-gritty work, so to kind of get together and look at the main priorities that we've identified, some of which I've mentioned, or kind of the overarching ones I've mentioned, and then spend time creating a work plan, and then we'll be happy to share that with everyone and send out information about where we're going to be focusing, and bring a report to the Arts Commission as well.
Great. So is that probably, do you think, in the fall or winter?
Yes, I think I think probably the earliest activities would start would be in the new fiscal year starting in July. And there may be certain things that, we begin to phase in then. The time span that we've chosen is about 2 years for the activities. So there's activities that will be rolling out over that time period.
Okay, great. And then I noticed on your chart that there was a dip in the preschool enrollment this year. And it made me think, I had another question about that. Are all the preschools, are they all focused on art at the same level, or just the fine arts preschool is more arts-based? And
they're all arts-based preschools.
They are now?
And
Okay.
actually, we went over those numbers quite a bit, and I think that they were sliced a bit differently because classes were divided up differently, because our revenue was actually more than last year. So I think the kind of intensity of service, or the amount of hours that people were spending were about the same, but some of the classes were like different lengths. And this year, our preschool enrollment is actually very robust. It's gone up.
Okay. Yeah, I was surprised by the way it looked on the chart.
I
so it
was
must be
too,
okay.
and yeah.
My last question was, you mentioned that the enrollment is increasing by 9%, which is great, and you're doing so many wonderful things. My question was, and I had sent this to you earlier, since so much effort and expense is going into the rebranding, how are you going to piece out and determine whether the rebranding is having a positive impact versus everything else you're doing?
Right. Well, as I answered to Jane's questions earlier, we're kind of establishing a baseline of data right now where we're kind of following along with different things that we do and seeing how people kind of typically are reacting to, say, Instagram posts or e-blasts or things like that, which will kind of be, the main dressing for our brand. So our brand will be, on physical objects. It will be on social media. It will be part of our new website. So for our website, it will be looking at, how much more are people using our website. Of course, it's going to be a better website, and it's also going to have a better brand. So again, it's that kind of teasing things out of that factor. In terms of our social media presence, it'll be kind of looking at, okay, we're actually at a relatively strong place in our social media. So how are people reacting when there's a new brand? We'll also be doing advertising that features our new brand, and it won't be about our new brand. It will be more about what people have always loved about us. But we'll be kind of looking at how people respond to that and putting some things in place to inquire from people about, where did you hear about this class that you're signing up for today, so that we can try to figure out if it's that advertising or some of those other things that the brand is kind of baked into.
And I guess when you use brand, it can refer to all those things. And I guess my question is kind of, and it's kind of where my background is from. If you do too many things, you can't really figure out what has the biggest impact. And I guess part of it, what I'm asking is, if you had done everything but change the name and the brand, would you be at the same place as where you are? And how would you ever determine that? Because there is a lot of expense, et cetera, to doing all that. So that was kind of the question. It's a cumulative impact, kind of hard to piece out, but could you have gotten to the same place without making...
I feel like the change of the brand is important no matter what, because I think that when we did focus groups, people did identify it as being something that could really use an upgrade, and that the name and the visual identity had associations for them that didn't kind of match up with the things that people love about the work that we do. So I think I do feel that it's going to continue to expand engagement, and especially to people who maybe haven't given us a look in a while. But I also think it's kind of a best practice in its own right.
I do want to say I love the new brand, and I agree that it was time, but I guess I always want to know that all of your efforts, how you can evaluate whether that happens.
Yeah.
So if there's
It's
a
a
way
good
to
question.
ask specifically about the name and the brand, that would be great.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions, and they're mostly focusing on the strengthen and expand key program areas, and how you're going to figure out what areas, what programs how to strengthen, how to expand those areas. So some of the questions that I have is, and I'm sure this is something that you have studied, the departments or the classes that are habitually full and have waiting lists. As a person who has taken classes there, it's like if you're not on the computer at 8 a.m. the day registration, you're gone.
It's very upsetting to people. Yes,
and how you're planning on, and I mean this is a general question. It's more of a comment than anything else, but because I don't really expect you to answer it so much, but you know, those classes and those departments that are that are habitually full and crowded and waiting lists, and then also coinciding with that in those areas, what are the overall plans in terms of expansion, studio improvements, et cetera, et cetera?
So to your first thought, there are some things that we're doing. So for example, as you saw, our two most popular programs are ceramics and drawing, painting, and printmaking. And I think for the people in those programs, they're a way of life, and that people often don't really like having a break between classes. So there's a break, and you know, everyone thinks that that's a good thing, but people actually express to us in focus groups that was a hard time for them sometimes, because their routine is going out the window and they just want to be here making art. So we, in both of those areas, we're putting in plans to have intersession classes during the breaks. That's already started in ceramics, and it's sold out the first time. And in drawing, painting, and printmaking, we'll be starting in the fall to have intersessions at the winter holidays, so that we know there's so many people participating that there's going to be that chunk of people who just want to keep working through that holiday period. We also try to diversify it by having more, say we, for instance, take a program that as a 10-week class is not really doing very well, it's just sort of skating by with 5 people in it. And instead of, you know, devoting all the real estate to it, we turn it into a weekend workshop. Then people are pretty excited because they're not getting this heavy dose, and it's open to more, you know, working adults. And then we can take another class and expand it and add another section of it that people really want to take. So we have been reaching out to instructors who, you know, have very popular classes to find solutions like that. So as far as the studio improvements, it kind of is also part of community engagement. So for instance, our printmaking studio has just been converted to a green printmaking studio. So the chemicals that we're using have been changed. One of our students and our instructors attended a national training about how to do this, and then we've supported them in making this change and sponsored a class for all the students. Now the students feel extremely bought in, they're very proud, and enrollment and engagement in the printmaking studio has gone up, and they feel more than ever that this is their place. The same thing just happened in our fiber art studio, where we did lots and lots of cleaning and organizing, and then noticed that sometimes, you know, there isn't always the understanding between the instructors of exactly how our looms should be used and what the best practices are, not to mention the students, and of course some of our looms cost, you know, tens of thousands of dollars. So we got everyone together for a loom care class, which again is something that builds community and understanding and teamwork, and then people feel more than ever like this is really their place that they love to be.
Yeah, you mentioned the ceramics and the increase in involvement. I just want to kind of give a shout out to the fact that I know I have a lot of friends who are in the ceramics department there, and I would say that the leadership of Gregory Bard is a huge element to the increase in participation. So
thank you. We really appreciate his work.
I want to give him his you know, due regard. So as someone who has who has participated in, I grew up with civic arts education. You know, I started taking classes there when I was a teenager. So, you know, it's kind of near and dear to my heart. But so I'm excited to see, you know, this expansion. But I am kind of curious also about some of the other classes that don't have as much participation and what kind of expansion and facility improvements you might be able to create.
Meaning some of the classes that have some of the disciplines that have lower enrollment?
Well, not so much lower enrollment. Like, for example, the one of the classes, the department that I've spent quite a bit of time in over the past couple of years is the jewelry, and the facility is so tiny, and it's always packed.
Yes, we
and
have a
there's
systemic
that
issue.
repeat. It's
there.
the same thing as the ceramics, you know. It was
Yeah.
always like, oh, we have to take a break. And the open studios, I think, was a great idea, and I was so pleased when that was implemented. But, you know, some of the areas that have, like you say, a real estate restriction is, you know, I'm
well,
assuming
more
plan.
than any other place in civic arts, the jewelry studio is the most challenged because of its very tiny facility. That's another place where we just got a whole new torch system, and we led a similar class in using the torch system. So we are doing our best to make improvements to make the space more usable for everyone. But when we went to visit, I don't remember if it was the Richmond or the Palo Alto Art Center, but they had this incredible big room where people, and they actually said they had barely any people involved because there was some other competing class in the community that was, you know, taking away a lot of their business, and I couldn't believe it. It was like, I want a big studio like this, because I know our students are very loyal, and they have a very small space to work in.
Very quickly, because I realized I had asked two questions initially, and I kind of spaced on an answer to the second one, which was on outreach programming, and I'm thinking namely of after school.
Oh, yes, I'm so sorry.
No, I had forgotten too. And actually, I'm curious, are you currently in any local schools, or what is your plan to be in schools, say, for fall 2016? And what would you bring to them? What are you thinking of offering?
So we recently wrote a grant to the California Arts Council to pilot an after-school program in 2 schools, one in Diablo Unified and one in Walnut Creek. The program would be a twice-a-week arts education program with two teaching artists from 2 different artistic disciplines that would be linked, one in the performing arts and one in the visual arts. And they would work with the students, kind of trading off work with the students throughout, and then kind of coming up with a collaborative project exhibit/performance at the end. That is meant to be a pilot, so we can try out some approaches and then see how this works with an eye to finding, you know, kind of sustainable, cost-effective ways that are responsive to the community to expand something like that. Yes, that is, well, if we get the grant, it will, I think we were thinking of doing the activities in the winter of 2017, like that semester starting in January. So that's an example. But, you know, we're interested in exploring all kinds of things, and our partnership with the Trinity Center, which is something that we're very excited about, is another example. Another example are some work that we've done with kind of social practice artists. Recently, we submitted a grant to the California Arts Council to do an art-making project with local affordable housing residents, for example. So I think there's just a million different ideas to reach out to people who are underserved by our programs and get them excited and feeling like this is their place and that they're part of it. So, you know, we just are really excited about that aspect of our work.
Anyone else have questions?
All right. Thank you so much for all the questions at this late
Thank
hour.
you. Thank you.
Yes.
That was a
Can I
really
give
good
my
report.
staff reports too, because Oh, you have to say.
Okay, so.
Good try.
It was worth a try. Next is the Arts and Recreation Community Service Department. Nope. Branding. Yep.
Yeah. Carolyn Jackson, Community Relations Manager for Arts and Recreation. I promise to be very, very brief. So at the department level, we've also been undergoing a branding process, a little bit in conjunction with what's going on at Center for Community Arts. And our goals are to develop a name and message that are really user-friendly and clear and tell the story of what we do and the impact we have on the community. And in addition, the process is a lot about, being a catalyst for deeper partnerships within our individual programs in the department. So it's as much about the process as the product. As part of this, Arts, Recreation, and Community Services will be transitioning to Walnut Creek Arts and Recreation. Officially, this will roll out to the public in July 2016 with the Fall Guide to Arts and Rec. But you will probably see internally that some documents are shifting over. As we're working on them now, it just makes sense to make the change. And we've partnered with Front Group Design, who also did the design work for the Center for Community Arts to develop a logo and visual identity, and we're in that work process now. We look forward to sharing the results of that, hopefully late May, early June, with you and the Pros Commission and the Council. And collaboratively with Center for Community Arts, both of those pieces will really launch to the public in the summer. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Does the word arts and the term recreation ever confuse people? Because many folks, or some folks, might think they're the same activity.
I think that's an interesting part of our discussion, that was also community services was a little bit like, arts and recreation classes are also community services. Are we saying the same things? But something that's really unique about Walnut Creek is how robust the arts programs are. Recreation programs are often, very robust in cities, but, our arts programs are special in this area, as you just heard, with the Civic Arts update. So it's important to us to have those distinctions, that we do have programs that fall mainly under arts and programs that fall mainly under recreation.
Anyone else? Any questions?
All right, thank you.
So next we have staff announcements or brief reports on activities.
Linda Johnson again. I want to invite everyone to attend our Family Art Festival on May 7th, which will be from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And it will include lots of fun art making and demoing and other stuff at Shadelands and in Civic Park. So in Civic Park, we'll have activities at the Ceramic Studio, including the Bedford Gallery. We will have at Shadelands everything from, a food truck and bounce house and outdoor performances, lots of different ways to do hands-on art making for adults and kids, and then many chances to visit classes and see demos. So it will be something we're doing a lot of outreach and marketing for, so that we can bring community members in to get a taste for what we do. Also this weekend, please attend the Clay Arts Guild sale at the Ceramic Studio, which will start on Friday night and go through Sunday, and there'll be lots of great ceramics for sale at affordable prices.
Is there a schedule online for the Family Day?
Yes, and there's it's on our Facebook page. There's an event on our Facebook. Oh, and then it's I believe it's been put up on our website as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Good evening, Carrie Letter, Bedford Gallery again. I'm just distributing to you a card that we're in the works of printing to better publicize our public art walking tours. Each of you will receive some of these in the mail, a short stack, and we'd love it if you'd help spread the word. Thanks so much.
One thing really quick from me, the City Council on Tuesday, staff received direction from the Council about a year ago to update the Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU, with the Diablo Regional Arts Association, DRA. We have done that. We've worked with the DRA board to craft a not a brand new document, but an update to the existing document that's going to council on Tuesday. I just wanted you to be aware of that as that was moving forward. That's the end of staff discussions for this evening. Thank you for being so patient and diligent, involved in the whole meeting. Yes. Oh, it's not the end.
Did we change very much of our understanding?
We're always evolving our understanding, but we did not change much. How about that?
And next we go to commissioners' announcements or brief reports on activities. Commissioner Bologna?
Nada.
Oh, that was brief.
Commissioner Manuel?
I'll be brief too. I had a lovely afternoon with the Arts and Recreation and Community Services staff members at the Bedford Gallery and introduced them to our new baseball show. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for coming.
Tampoco nada. Nothing. Nobody knows what that.
Just real quick.
I hope so.
I understood it, actually.
Yeah.
Commissioner Bradbury and I both had the, I don't want to say the honor, I guess, of attending a very early morning joint commissioners breakfast meeting with the mayor and vice mayor, which is actually always very interesting. We did hear a little bit more information about the North Downtown Specific Plan, so that was good. And then, as Linda had mentioned during her report, one of the things that I think it was the planning department mentioned is that the School for Performing Arts is opening in Shadelands right across the street, which is very exciting for the community.
And I have, as always, enjoyed the Bedford opening. I'm not huge fan of baseball, but it was an awful lot of fun to go to the opening. But yeah, there were lots of fun little quips that. But I wanted to point out, I don't know if everybody has seen the Walnut Creek magazine, the article on public art. I just thought it was so exciting to read this article, and since I've already read it, I'll give it away to anybody who hasn't. But it's really nice to see the works that we are all working on being publicized and emphasized in such a great format. So this was really fun to see. So thank you. Guess I have more to do, don't I? Now I get to adjourn the meeting. Thank you so much. Yay.